Okay, so we got O3 Pro has landed. That's all fun. I honestly don't know how to use it, to be honest. I got Codex, it's great. I got O3, O3 is amazing. I got O3 Pro, I'm like, I don't know if that is better or worse. I maybe I'm not smart enough to have the questions that really show it up. But be that as it may, um, where we're at is all of the that mock has been split out into frames. So where are we? So the issue that I'm having right now, so I've got all these components. Hopefully it renders. It doesn't make me look like a tool on the stream. Yeah, here we
You're
go.
on video now. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all of this is rendering as frames, which is great. See, it's got view frame source, reload frame. So like
All
the
right.
whole,
Yeah.
every little panel is running as a frame.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's
Okay,
very nice.
so that whilst it all looks identical,
No. I get you. I get you. Being every step of the way, every sore fucking blister on your toe.
yeah,
Yeah.
whilst it does look the same, everything is actually a genuine frame. Now, um, the current problem that I'm dealing with is what is the file format of a transclude and what is the file format of a chat. In particular, what is the file format of a self chat versus an agentic chat or a peer chat. Because the reason why I need to figure that out is I guess I'm at the stage of implementing the passing of messages between repos, which is not something that, like, I've done that many times in many ways. That's effectively chain joining, which is what the chain joining patent was about. But this method of using transcludes is a much more elegant way of doing it. But there are some decisions to be made around what is the file format of a transclude and uh, how does it ratchet? Like if you and I are having a message thread and we're sending transcludes between each other, how do we notch the conversation forward? Like, do I include the messages from you that I saw in the message in the order I saw them? Could I mess with that and corrupt it in some way? Could I trip over myself? Did I waste data? Like, did the transclude write data that is ultimately single use or transient in nature and therefore it clogged the repo unnecessarily? Um,
Right. Okay.
these are all the fun problems, right? So far I think I've got solutions to all of them, except
Well,
for how do you
don't
send
don't
a whole repo?
don't tell me about any of the solutions yet, because I've got the benefit of um, not having worked through the problem. Um, so greenfield. Um, Pause. Right on. I'm going to deal with I'll call them discussions. It doesn't matter whether it's between humans or agents. It seems that you want to record conclusions. So when we talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We go round the boy a few times. There's corrections, there's enhancements, but there's generally a conclusion. And it's the conclusion is the interesting thing to store, not the whole thread. It might be useful to store the thread for going back later and saying, was that conclusion right? But the conclusion is the thing.
I think you're talking about the knowledge base. How do we
Yeah,
right?
but
How do, yeah,
you,
that's different though.
yeah,
That's different. That's different to that's a separate processing pass, which is the compaction or distillation, the concentration of knowledge from these threads. But
yeah,
the way, and you're welcome to correct me if the use case is wrong, but the problem I'm trying to solve for right now is two humans, you and me, having a chat between each other, and that's it. Because if I can get that right, then I can swap you out for a bot.
yeah. But the problem with that is the same problem that I get with you take a transcript from these conversations, and there's a whole bunch of stuff which is backwards and forwards before we reach a consensus about
Yeah, what's wrong
the
with that though?
idea.
I'm talking about the protocol level bits and bytes, and how does that get stored efficiently, and how does that get transported?
Oh, so the raw stuff.
The raw stuff, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Ah, right. Okay, I get you. I get you. Um,
All that other stuff is sort of fun for everyone to just sail in there, because there's a lot of wrong answers. There may not be a right answer. There's probably a good enough for the current models right now answer, but the protocol is going to stay the same. The means of transmission is doesn't care about any of
so,
that.
so what I've been doing with the transcripts is, it's all fine and well to have one transcript. That's easy enough. But what you want to do is to do a train of thought through multiple transcripts. And in order to do that, um, I've been doing it manually up to now. It's like, well, we talked about this topic on this day, this same roughly topic on 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago, and so on, and getting some kind of link between that. I found that quite useful.
Okay, that's a level above where I'm at. I can sort of imagine a couple of ways to do what you're saying, but again, that wouldn't change the protocol that it's happening over in any way I can see.
Are you more interested in thinking about or talking about the folder structure for threads?
Yep, the folder structure for a thread and the folder structure for a transclude, and the folder structure for a group chat, which is like not one to one, but for many.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm. Oh God, I see your problem. Oh God, that's a tricky one. Because it's group chat. What do you store it against the user? Do you store it against the thread? You do store it
yeah, and like,
against
does the
the
group
topic.
have a dedicated ID? Do all the participants need to agree what that ID is?
And then
Is
how do you branch between disparate things which may be interesting, but you need to discover them?
And then,
Okay.
like, is the group capable of having multiple threads? Like, if we say that you and I can start multiple threads, then can the group do the same? And now the group
Hmm.
has these shared threads?
And then you've got embedded threads, but you've also got kind of parent threads that they might be talking about.
Yeah,
They
and
might
but
have
all those things,
subgroups.
I'm not afraid of those things. I think they're good because you can set up bots to be compactors or reapers, where because if you look at your WhatsApp, maybe like 3 or 4 screens down, and you don't even care anymore or remember in half the cases. And so if you had a compactor that's going through and like squashing down and distilling out the knowledge from stale threads, it's like recycling the threads. The complexity sort of is on a schedule crushed out. You can recover it anytime, sure, but the point is to reduce the mental load. So I'm not worried about any of those types of things.
Right, right, right. So, what's the most important thing with conversations? Is it who said what, or is it what was said, or perhaps something
Both.
uh,
I think both.
It feels like a vector database, to be honest. It feels like proximity.
Again, I think you're at a different layer. Maybe we should name that layer because I'm concerned with getting the data to you and persisting it and making sure it has its integrity and was delivered confidentially. But
Yeah.
what you do with it once you got it is another layer.
Right, because you can also do post-processing on anything
Yeah,
that's stored.
yeah. That's why I sort of reduced the problem down to you and me talking, and then I pass you a repo, and
All
that's
right.
kind of that's the key
Well,
use case.
well, here's a gut shot, as in I've not really thought much about this, but it seems like the persistent thing are the users, be they humans or agents. That is the persistent thing. Who they talk to pops in and out, could be correlated and so on, but the user seems to be the top level. And so, in terms of file storage, feels like each entity should have a list of files, which is their interaction with other items.
Yeah.
Other
All right. Well,
entities.
why don't I'll tell you how. I'll tell you what I got so far.
Yeah, cool.
Um.
I was saying I was quick and
Yeah.
dirty because it was greenfield.
So I think that any repo can be chat enabled, and you become chat enabled by running a nap called the chat nap, and the chat nap needs to be given a folder slice to control, which is unimaginatively called the chats folder. And then the chat nap controls the file structure from that point on. And so any repo, an actor repo can do it, but any repo can have a chat folder and can have chats coming in and out of it, I think.
Excuse me. Excuse me. I did the same thing as the other day, swallowing a fly.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
That old Scottish summer.
Well,
And so
that sounds very similar to what my gut said there.
yeah, yeah. And so,
Because,
but it gets curly, right? Because then you're like, well, self, this would be like, this is what ChatGPT gives you. Self, which is implicit because that's who you logged in as. And then each chat has a unique, so ULID stands for unique lexicographical ID, which is
okay, all right. So that is quite similar to my off the hip,
right.
quick and dirty, because / is the person.
Yeah, or the
entity.
entity,
Yeah.
and then chats becomes just a slice, which could have been named, chats 2 or chats secret or whatever. But it's just like you just installed the chat snap, and it's running the stuff for you, right?
And so / is the entity. Inside of that, you can cut it however you want, or segregate it however you want. But these are things that the top level entity is saying, and then the job would be to link those to conversations with other top level / entities.
I'm not sure. How I was going to do this, right? I was going to go self, here's all the chats. Then I was going to go, say, actor pub key 1 is really just another repo. And then I would have, say this was you. Like, say I was / in this case, or I was self. and I'm having a talk to you. You are actor pub key 1, and so these would be my chats with you that would
Mm-hmm.
come up here, right? And so they'd just be given random IDs. I don't think it matters. But then group, like let's say me, you, and Andre have a chat in a group, and now the group has threads, like so. And then the issue, one of the places I come a cropper is if this was an agent, where does the triggering happen? Because if I message an agent, I should appear to it like actor pub key 1 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then these chats need to trigger self or self reasoning, because if I send a message to the agent, I expect it to trigger some thinking before the agent does something back. So I would, at a guess, I would have connected up the event streams where any new message is sort of redispatched into a new thread on the self channel. And in there, it can do its internal reasoning with different models and different bots and RAG systems and retrievals and all that. And then it finally spits out an answer, and then that's what comes back to the actor, I think.
It's not straightforward, is it?
It's
So,
it's like it's sort of obvious, and it's sort of
well,
there's
yeah,
multiple ways you could do it, I think, is the problem.
yeah. So, go through that again. So, as pub key 1,
Yeah, so I'll give that a nice name, right? So are we saying that this is gonna be Smacks,
yeah, yeah,
and Smacks
okay,
has had a chat, which
yeah,
is gonna be Eulid 7.
yeah,
We'll give that a friendly name. It would be
yeah, this chat, yeah, oh, whatever.
what does Smacks like to talk about? Locust swarms. Those locust swarm control models. How does a swarm of locusts act as one with no central control, for example?
Now, inside of that folder, what are the files?
That's a great question. The way I've been modeling it right now is that each chat message, so each here's your chat and here's your messages back and forth. Each time someone takes a turn is a single JSON file that I was going to number with the order of the message. So it'd be like 0.JSON,
Right, right. So
one.json.
0 point JSON would be something like, "Hi, I'd like to talk about locust swarms."
Yeah, that's right.
Where's the response stored?
There.
Right. So it's stored there, but who's responding to it? Because
Yeah, that's the question, right? So we've got events. So you are connected to, is / me or is / an agent?
um, let's just call it an agent.
Okay, if / is
Of
an
which,
agent, then it needs to be hooked up so that in the events screen, which is not showing but coming real soon. So events was, we agreed, was going to go there.
Yeah.
and then you would connect up events to like it would be on on new message, it would be connected to self, where it would start a new self thread. And self is where you'd configure which agents or which models or which prompting or which whatever the agent was going to use to generate its responses.
So that's kind of routing. Yeah.
Yeah, routing. And then so this message would come in, it would trigger an event, the event would pop it into self, which would start a new chat called I think that should be, it'd just be like, it would be a unique ID, but it would be
Yeah.
like ULID 8/locust
Right. And the ID could be
swarm.
inside the JSON.
Yeah. I just, yeah. And then in here, it's like, you know, do we think the user is asking about weapons control systems?
So
And then it's like, ding, ding, ding,
there's
ding, ding.
a in the in this quick and dirty text example, you don't have two people talking to each other here. So say if it was two well, let's take the easiest one, two people. They would both have separate forward slash.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you and me?
Yeah.
So I'll pretend I'm / now, and this is you, Smacks.
Well, I'm not under you.
No, well, you are actually. From my point of view, you are contained within my chats folder.
But from my point of view, you're contained inside my
Correct.
chats folder.
Correct. And so that's really the data structure that I'm just massaging out and reconciling through, is that it needs to be flippable like a crossover cable, so that the file, but the key to the file format is that it must be reusable Git objects, because in the transclude, I want to send like 0.json in the transclude, which means that I want 0.json to arrive on your side and be exactly useful in that hash format. So it's not like in a normal regular app, when you're sending messages back and forth, you have the server, which is this silent, unspoken central thing, and so you don't have these issues. Right?
But you don't want duplication.
No, that's the thing. And so that's why I chose to send it as one file per turn, because the hash of that object can be used on both sides without alteration at all, which means that if both sides were sharing the same object storage, it would be deduplicated.
Wouldn't it just be as easy to say, because the conversation is turnabout. So whoever says one thing, they store it, and then you refer to it by giving permission to read that thing in person one's repo.
Yeah, but that's the transclude. Like I feel strongly that I want to do it by sending a transclude, because and it seems like it's a doable thing. Like it's just like at the moment, like I mean, I just literally just got off the plane with this idea, but I think it's that a transclude just holds the pointer to the previous transclude that I just sent over, an acknowledgement of the latest transclude from you that you sent to me that I got, and then I send over my messages.
It feels.
And then that's how you build it up, and then we both have this shared view if we break the protocol and I say something that's out of order, then you're like, dude, you can't say that, and you break there's no more new messages because you're like, no, you're not calculating it the same way as me. We can't go on.
Yeah, yeah. Feels like if we solve transcludes, then we solve this problem. Another slightly different problem.
I think it is solved. It's just I just I'm just sort of wandering through all the options. But now that I say it out loud, I don't think it can be any other way than what I just said there.
Yeah. You very may well be right. I just don't fully get it yet. So, take this conversation. You see something, I see something, you see something, I see something. In each statement, that's got to be stored somewhere.
Yep.
We each have our own repos. So is it that in the context of a folder which is, timestamped now on this topic, inside that folder there are individual JSON files for each statement. If I say a statement, it's in my repo. If you say a statement, it's in your repo.
Yes and no. If I say a statement, I send it to you by way of a transclude that points to that thing I just said and the previous transclude hash that I just sent you, so that you know that this is the next message in the sequence.
Yeah, but transclude is not primary data. Transclude,
it's an envelope. That's the key. It's always, it's never primary data. It's always an envelope. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pass you some primary data so that you can make it pop up in your repo, and it will have provenance that the transclude gives you, but it otherwise looks like it just materialized out of thin air, like it popped up like a portal.
So that envelope could be done a few things. You could photocopy all your previous statements and send them over. I would already know my statements. Do I store your photocopies, or are these pointers so that you could,
They're sent as Git objects, which means that while they're being sent, both of our hosting services will negotiate, like, maybe I've already seen that hash before somewhere, and so I don't need it from you just now.
Or kind of caching,
Well, not caching, like the good thing about Git is that if there's any binary identical files, you don't need them twice. You only need the hash. And so if, for example, in the conversation, we're talking about a large binary file, but we've also spoken about it in other conversations, then
it knows the address of it and just
your server won't ask my server for that thing. The transclude envelope will arrive. You'll look at it. You'll be like, I've got that. Woo, the big one. I've got that. No further questions. And that's it. But what you're doing is your chat's NAP is maintaining this. We are seeking to maintain an identical file structure between us. So when I say something new, I send you a transclude with my newest edition. When you say something, you send me a transclude with your newest edition. We don't conflict because we name well, but we do sometimes have to merge. Because if you and I say something at the same time and then we send our transcludes, now we're like, oh, hey, you said what I said and you said something at my time, and then we'd reconcile and be like, okay, now we've got this.
Yeah, there's a word for that. It's like jinx or something like that.
Jinx, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we jinx each other, all that happens is there's like one more transclude goes back and forth where we both agree what the resting state of the channel that we've opened is, because I think of these folders and these message streams as a channel, and you're only sending the next transclude just stacks on top what the latest messages from you were, And then as you receive transcludes from the other side, you build up your model. The idea being that you and I should both have the exact identical hash of this folder, because that's what we're
This
trying to share.
feels a lot like networking.
It isn't. It isn't. It is because of the back and forth, but it isn't because the final goal is shared state. It's reconciliation of state. And so in the chain joining patents, we'd made channels that were just stacks of JavaScript objects. But here I'm trying to say that a channel is a folder, and the folder can be anything. And you transclude with the other side anytime you change something in the folder structure, and you're really using the transcludes to negotiate with each other to reach agreement on what the new state of the folder is. Now, two willing participants are gonna pretty much all the time be in agreement, because you say something and I'm like, yep, and then I say something and you're like, yep.
might not. Yeah.
But any kind of silly business on either end, and the channel's going to shut down. It's like something is unreconcilable here. I don't know. I can't help
Are
but say.
transcludes objects, hashed objects themselves?
Yes. But they are specially
But how do
intended
you-
to be
how-
moved.
How do you reconcile a common state of transcludes when the transcludes are there to reconcile common state? It's going to go around in circles.
No, because your transcludes have your identity stamped on them, and my transcludes have my identity stamped on them, and you and I
Okay.
can
All right,
reach.
so we cut it at that point and saying that's good enough.
Well, when I see that your transclude matches mine,
Then we agree.
then we're in consensus. Great.
Right, gotcha. Okay. All right, so in terms of the file format, you have a list of, for any conversation like this one, a record of what you've said.
Yeah.
I've got a record of what I've said, and we've got a method of passing and reconciling what the thread is, which
Yeah.
is just a he said, she said, blah, 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 backwards and forwards.
Yeah. And so when it comes to groups, all we do is we just, like that message channel can handle arbitrarily many different people, so long as they're all sticking to the rule that you only push your own messages. So you order your messages, like this is the first thing I said, the second thing I said, the third thing I said, but everyone else is doing the same, and then you display it back together.
Yeah, that works. What happens when you get groups talking to groups? Should be the same, right?
Groups talking to groups. You mean like a group of people wanted to have one voice to talk to another group of people that also decided it wanted one voice?
Right, because we're talking about entities, and an entity can have an AI agent that talks to another group.
So you want to make a group be an entity?
Yeah, why not?
There's no reason why not.
Because that's kind of the whole agentic thing is deal with the background, but there's lots of messages going backwards and forwards. There's one voice that comes out. You could easily have two, and those two could talk to each other.
Yep. Shit, how would I do that? I think it's just that you'd need to make a repo where the repo represented the group, I think.
Yeah.
And then, so let's say that / was the group representative.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would start a group chat with the group representative, and we would set up the triggers so that anytime there's a new message in the group chat, it triggers the self thread, which does things like, are they talking to me? Should I say something? Am I supposed to talk to this other group? And then you'd also have this other chat with like the foreign group. And you just have to wire up the events and the prompting so that it's like, okay, when you have decided that there's something to say it to the foreign group chat.
So one of the rules then would be groups can talk to other groups, but only if it has one voice.
As a
Because
proxy.
otherwise-
Yeah, like, and just for my own clarity, how else could it work?
Well, it would be nonsense if there was a group with multiple voices that
Because
talk for
isn't-
that group. You would have to pop out of that group and do a back channel.
Yeah, like the only other way, before we had agents, before we had AI, the only way is that you'd elect a representative from the group, and that person would,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or you'd do things like a DAO, where people could propose the next thing you want to say to the other entity, and then people vote on it or modify it and things like that. But I think what you're really describing there actually is a model of a DAO, but greatly accelerated, where it's an AI that's always figuring out if some action should be done based on what all the members are saying. So to put that in concrete terms, you would start this repo entity that represented DAO. There would be people would come and join the controller group or the voting group, the speaking group, and then each time anyone did something, the AI would be prompted to look at their vote weight, like how important is that person? Do they have this much vote? Is it this? Is it that? And it would use that rule set to decide, okay, it's time to act. And so the control group just says stuff, thinks about stuff, or can talk directly to the AI. It's like, hey, self, or hey, DAO, I want to nuke this thing. And then it's like, whoa, someone with high vote just said instruction. Now I need consensus. So it's like, hey, does anyone else agree with that this is the right thing? And then like 2 other power voters are like, yep, we're in, and then it whirs away in the self threads, and it's like ding, 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 ding. Okay, time to push the button. Bang. And then that's a DAO, but it's a DAO that's exceptionally fluid and very low friction, because there's no like, you don't have to be precise about your orders. You don't have to reach exact consensus on the thing. It can be sloppy. Plus, it's drawing on all the knowledge and the discussions that you've had and votes you've passed in the past. It's got its own sense of judgment and control and its own sort of goals and prompts. And now you've got this DAO that just gets stuff done. It can even get stuff done without someone saying something based on external stimuli. The DAO can be triggered, and it's like, oh, yep, time to go to work. Dunk, 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 bang, and then off it goes, right?
Yeah, precisely. And also, interesting enough, it's got a kind of self-reflection in the architecture in that an individual entity is effectively a group of 1, or perhaps a group of 2 if you include the self AI.
Self is a funny one. Like, yeah, I'm still perplexed about self. I'm pretty sure that the model is correct where you self for an agent is where it does its own internal reckoning or internal. It's where it does its own deliberations inside of itself.
Right, and for a human entity, you can do that in your bath or wherever you want to go for a walk.
Well, as a human,
back.
I would do that with myself in my own self channel, where I would have like ChatGPT style conversations.
Well, then you've added another entity, which is but that's
No.
now a group. It's a group. There's 2 of you. There's 2 entities. There's you and your.
No, it's not. It's not an entity if it doesn't have agency. I think is something
that's really interesting.
that we need to just draw a line on, because otherwise it all fucking devolves. Like,
Right, okay.
you know, like you can't.
So-
You need to draw that distinction, because otherwise you got an agent who is it talking to if it's deliberating? Like, it can't be talking to other agents, because how would they deliberate? You need this internal
Yes,
place,
yes,
right?
very, very yes.
Very yes.
Because
Okay.
if you, sorry, very,
Very yes.
stupid thing to say. Um, so if you think about how people think, they have different voices in their head or
Yep.
different, processes they consider. But there's no entity without the act of, talking to someone else or doing something else, because the rest is inside your head. If you just wired up your medulla oblongata to, your microwave, it would be on lots of porn, probably. Um, so it needs to be black boxed. And so one of the rules
Well,
here is there's a single voice out from any entity. An entity is a single voice,
yeah.
and that entity allows that
Oh, here's
entity to
a
interact.
here's a catchy little rhyme for you. An entity
Uh-huh.
is an identity, and if it doesn't have identity in the system, then it doesn't count,
Right.
right?
Because in thinking internally doesn't count,
It
because
doesn't. No, it doesn't change. It's
other
not. It's not an identifying act. Like, to the outside world, you don't
yeah,
know that anything happened, right?
because there's no conclusion, there's no consensus. It doesn't even need consensus, because I don't know about your brain, my brain
No,
very
it just
gets
did not
consensus.
act externally.
Yeah, but what you
There has to be an internal and an external demarcation for agents. And internal to the agent is what self is all about.
that is an important rule, Xanadu style, of their
Yeah,
17 rules. That's an
yeah,
important rule,
that's a good one, eh?
because that demarks the line. Inside of that, you can go all the way down to artifact, which is non-conscious. Let's say call it. You can go up to other AIs. You can get AIs to chat. You can even get people to chat. But if you have one voice that can actually interact, then we've got a bit of cohesion with interacting with other black boxes. So there seems to be a fundamental rule there that if you can interact and what do you call it? Entity is identity.
Yeah,
Without identity, you can't affect anything other than your own internal state.
yeah, that's right.
That feels quite important.
Yep.
Yeah, pause for a
Okay.
second.
All right. Let me know when you're done.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think it could be done any other way. Otherwise,
No,
it'd be
that's
chaos.
sort of what I was looking for, right?
Chaos.
It's the just simply deduction. Okay, that kind of checks out then. It
It
means
does.
that each identity would send in a message with a sequence number that it generates, and for a group, they're everyone's just sending transclues to everyone else in the group, and then the folder that any given person has is being built up of all these messages that they have, and I think each time you send a new transclude, you also send what the state of the whole folder is from your point of view, so that it covers the case where one person's messages are delayed or net split or Byzantine. And then because you're saying what you're seeing, everyone else can be like, oh no, you're missing this bit, or hey, I'm missing this other bit, or no, hang on, he said different things at ID number 5. Let's gang up on him and take his money. Like,
Yeah, but the good thing is it's fuzzy. I don't know if you recall, because it's way back in the 90s.
fuzzy
You had
logic.
your fuzzy. Yeah, exactly.
That was
is
Edward,
fuzzy.
apparently.
Was it?
Yeah.
Huh.
That was his first big break, I think, from if I understood the story correctly.
I was a huge fan of fuzzy logic. Now, okay, so that's slicing it down the identity matrix, but you can also have entities that are contributors to different identities. How does that work? Or let's
Say that again, please.
So you got identities, black boxes, like group chats,
Right.
but you can be member as an entity of many identities. We're all members of multiple group
Yeah.
chats.
Yeah. So there's a repo, and we're all members, or we control that repo to some degree, right?
Yeah, but there's not a one-to-one identity to entity to identity, because let's take just group chats as an example. I can be a member of a number of group chats. What we're said is group chats are an identity that can affect things,
Not
right?
necessarily. That a group chat doesn't have to be an identity. It needs to be configured the right way for a group chat to have an identity, but a regular group chat would not have an identity.
Okay, okay. We'll park that one for now, but that is a good point. But let's
Yeah.
say that it's configured that there's an identity of a group chat, and I'm contributing to a number of group chats.
Yep.
So I'm an entity in
Yep.
a number of group chats. How does that affect where what I say is stored?
You would just have it's simply your chats folder is like group 2 / group 43. Like it's just folders of groups.
Right, right.
And you can be in as many as you like.
So groups are really transclusions.
Well, no. Hang on. Yes and no. Groups where like a direct message, we're gonna say is a limiting form of a group, right? It's a group with 2 members.
Yeah.
But it's still a group from our point of view.
Yeah.
So a group is it is a piece of shared state that is reached by sending and receiving transclusions until you've got a state that you know both of you share.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And but that doesn't mean that the group is a transclusion. It just means that it got there by way of transclusion. It is included in a transclusion, but I would say that a group is more than just the transclusion, because the group represents the potential to do more stuff. Whereas that potential is not a transclusion, that's just the potential to make more transclusions. And so it's...
Yeah. You're talking about one level above what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about where the JSON objects of I'm an entity and I'm a member of 2 groups. I'm talking to this group, I'm talking to that group, but the group itself is a black box that's an identity that can...
Well, each group is a folder that is isolated from all the other group folders. And so each of the groups that you're in, your machinery works together to try and get you all on the exact same view of what's happening in the group chat.
So is there a folder structure or repo somewhere that has the hashes of, in this, a simplistic case of a 2-person group?
Yeah.
But each of us are in different groups. Does that reach into my repo and look for the transclusion, the hash of what I said, and then what you said, and then, you know, backwards and forwards. in two
I'm not
different
I'm not
groups.
exactly sure if I understand what you're asking, but can I have a shot at it by way of explaining how transclusions are transmitted?
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
cool.
So chats, there's a it feels like a network service type of model where I'll call it transmissions because it's basically saying that
Is that under the / at the top, or is that
yeah,
something
that's
you?
under the / at the top. I'll put it there just to be super clear.
Okay, cool.
And then here you would say so if let's say in say group 2, let's say group 2 has got 2 members, right? And I'll call it group 2 member 1 and group 2 member 2. So that would mean that it had 3 members, which would be me, member 1 and member 2.
Okay.
Okay?
And probably under, there'd be multiple transmissions, but let's leave that for now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, any time that you need to get a transclusion to someone else or receive one from someone else, it would be a folder under transmissions, I think.
I think so. I mean, you've encoded that by saying group 2.
Yeah.
But like transmissions groups.
I don't think I want to I don't think that I don't think I want to make transmission groups. I think I want to always have point to point transmissions because like I can't see how to do like a multi user group where we're talking about the protocol level of stuff. Like it feels more natural to just always go point to point. Like if there's 5 members in the group, everyone points at all 5 members.
No, I agree.
But
because you can always construct if you've got because otherwise you're going to get kind of wound up in dedupe problems.
Well, hang on. There is some deduplication that you get from that. In that, let's say that group 2 has say it's got member 1 and it's got member 2, but you might have like group 42 might have say member 1 in it and member 7, but up in transmissions here you would only really like I only called it group just to try and help the example, but actually it's only members. So you'd have a transmission folder for member 1 and a transmission folder for member 2 and a transmission folder for member.
And that would be a transclusion of the contents of member 1, say. For
these would be all the transclusions that you were. This is where the transclusions live. This is where they're stored in the file system, and then the background processes lift them up. They go out and they try and find member 1 by its cryptographic identity, and they say, hey, I've got a bunch of transclusions for you. Here you go. And the same is happening for incoming messages where people who are trying to talk to you by your identity are trying to find you and push transclusions into you. And so because member 1 is in both these groups, if you looked at the member 1 transclusion history, you would see transclusions that related to group 2 and group 42, but it's all just being sent and received to this one member. Like, I think that's how it goes. It gets a bit shitty when you get like massive groups, but I think I can only really see this far, and I'm like, this works for a lot of cases. If I just get this up, then maybe I can see a better way.
No, I agree. It feels I don't know why it feels slightly scrappy. But I can see it work. It works. It's just at a very large scale.
Yeah, at large scale it gets shitty, but then like
But we don't need to worry about that.
there are a number of
Once.
techniques that you can employ that are very well trodden. Like IPFS has these kinds of problems, and so
Yeah.
one of the key ways they get around it is that you avoid having a direct connection to other members in the group if you can relay through someone else. So relaying
You know,
messages.
I keep going back to this network analogy, but it does feel like packetizing of comments.
It absolutely is. Each comment is anything is its own dedicated hash-based object in this model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, people can crucify us for whether we're wasting data by doing it like that, but using transcludes as the envelope, the only thing that ever got wasted was the transclude envelope, if anything. And it didn't get wasted if you value provenance, but you could just discard that whole branch if you were like, well, we kept it for, you know, a month and then we wiped it. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think it's wasteful. I think it's necessary because to go back to the start, what we're really trying to do is to get an entity to be able to talk to multiple other entities.
yeah,
Have that entity to make some kind of impact in the real world, and have each entity allowed to be member of multiple groups.
yeah. And this model solves that, but it solves it in a way that doesn't rely on a central service. Because
Yeah, exactly.
right, we could definitely do groups if I made this service that was like the group chat server, and then that's how you do group chatting is you just talk to the server and it sends you the updates.
WhatsApp and Signal does already.
Yeah, like, you know, we could do that, but I like the direct peer-to-peer thing because it means that there's a little bit more complexity, but there's less moving parts.
Yes.
And it just feels, I guess,
And also,
if push came to shove, it just feels like the correct thing to do, which isn't a great answer.
No. I get you. I don't have a terribly clear answer about why I get you, but
this is Dark Age compatible. This model. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
This is Dark Age compatible.
It degrades nicely.
And it recovers nicely as well. It recovers nicely.
Yeah. It's decentralized and all that goodness. And I mean, you could get something similar. Well, WhatsApp and Signal and that sort of thing. Sure, do this in terms of the user level, but you're still reliant on centralization.
Yeah. So I really liked what you were saying about setting up a group chat inside of a DAO, and then you all chat, and it sometimes triggers actions, but also the DAO responds to external excitation in coherent ways based on what the controlling group chat has said, plus each member of the group has weighting because, you know.
Well, that wasn't really my idea, but that's essentially Dreamcatcher inside of a group chat.
I think it's different because that's new to me, because we'd typically explored ways of autonomous control of projects, but we hadn't talked about hybrids where it's a mixture of humans and bots that ultimately cause the project to act. And before we move
Oh
on,
yes, I see what you're saying. I see what you're
yeah,
saying. Yes, that is new.
that is new. And there's one more
Yeah.
really good new bit that I need to lay on the table before we move past it, is that there's a special case in that configuration, which is to say that if you made the controlling group be permissionless or have no restrictions on who can join, then you start to have these AI controlled projects that we talked about. And so, but what I realized from this chat is that it's actually a dial or a slider where there can be a group of controlling members that have more say than just anyone, where just anyone can have no say if we want, or just anyone is the only way that you have a say. And
Right, because what we were talking about before was a special case where the AI was the one and everyone just accepted the
yeah,
game rules.
that's right, that's right. But actually, there's a spectrum there,
Yeah.
and you know, like another limiting form is where you are the only member of the control group, and you say what you want, and then the agent goes and does it intelligently, based on a knowledge base, based on all the things you said in the past. You know, it's like it's
Right.
personalized. It's not just
Right.
blindly you click a
Which
button and
is
then a machine fucking kicks off. It's like it's an intelligent thing.
just to state it out loud for the recording. Your when you said there's a difference between entity and identity, that just falls out. What you've just said. Um, entity is not the same as an identity. An entity is someone who interacts, and an identity is someone who or a thing that can get stuff done. And those examples of what you just said, what we were talking previously was the identity was an AI, and everyone just bowed to the AI.
Yeah,
What we've got now is the identity is a collection of, it could be multiple AIs, but it's black box, and multiple humans,
right,
but it deals with it, and
right.
an individual is
It's
an
any
identity
combination.
because it's just a dictator. It's
Yeah,
like a one entity identity.
yeah. So I think that covers all possible control models for agents.
Consistency. And back to your original question on the structure, I think what you've got here works for all thry, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
I
does
think.
absolutely, because it's all about the triggers that you hook up, and I'm feeling confident after like having to explain myself to you is extremely helpful, because if a theory I have can survive at least explaining, I'd say that's 80% of the way to being a realistic solution. And I felt I was able to explain quite clearly the self channel and why it always needs to be there, because that's how, whenever any state changes occur in any of the other chats, self is how it figures out how to respond, which might
Yeah.
just be a reply. It could be some other actions. It could be a whole range of things. But
Black box inside your head, you know.
yeah, why do you keep saying black box? Because it's
Uh,
transparent here.
well, I'm saying black box because it doesn't.
You just mean
It's trying.
isolation, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's
The black
considering.
box doesn't mean hidden. Like, it's not hidden. It's not indestructible. It's just isolated or separate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the same way as, our protocol is if I say pause, and take 10, 20 seconds to
right,
think.
right.
But you
Well,
could,
that's a black box, because I can't really see what's happening in there. But
I,
in this model, you could go into the self channel of your agent and you could see its reasoning and how it decided on the next action it was going to take.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, which is what I do when
yeah,
self-considering.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So it's not really. You're right. It's not really black box. It's isolated.
internal.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so we're still cool with saying that as a human, so as an agent, it's clear to me what the self channel does. But as a human, the self channel is just me chatting with conventional chatbots, like ChatGPT style interface, right?
For what can be recorded, yes, but there's a really interesting but not very practical comment I'll make that self in this situation as a human actually goes into your own consideration, isolated thought channel. You might go out for a walk for a couple of hours, but it's not recorded
Right,
for
but
you.
that's not on record.
Right,
But
exactly.
you would use this self channel to do things that you didn't want to be on the external record, where you're just deliberating about something internally,
Right, right.
right?
You,
And you're
you,
calling on some tools to help, and then yeah. So I guess I would like to imagine that the self channel will disappear or dissipate as agents become more powerful from the point of view of a human. Like, I would expect that the self channel would be less and less useful to people the more useful agents become. But the self channel is essential to an agent because, in reality, as you say, the self channel for humans is in the human brain, but the self channel for agents needs to be somewhere, and that's it.
yes,
Like the
and
internal monologue.
yes, yeah, internal monologue, and imagine using this model, and I think it stands up to broker a peace between, Russia and Ukraine. Um, the conversations between multiple entities and the internal processes of each entity, and if we added AI into that, um, would not and should not be made available, but the next utterance out from that entity needs to be public.
Yeah. Can you wait? I think I might have prematurely agreed. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how this model stands up to peace negotiations. I just said Russian,
Yeah.
Ukraine. Um, Multiple entities are talking amongst themselves. Um, some of those may be AIs, which record. Some may be humans, which don't record. But each expresses themselves in an isolated manner, and then comes to their next position in the negotiation with the other part, which is an entirely different group.
Right. Okay, so that means that in that case, you would have the Israel, the Izzy, Iran peace talks group chat,
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
and then members in there would be like UN Security Council and
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
each one of these can have not just their own internal deliberation with self, but also other group chats that they would
Yes.
be having that were not available to the other members in the group. Like ISR might have a chat with its parliament, where it's like the parliamentary group chat,
Right.
where
Right.
they're all talking about
Right.
what to
Or
say next.
some specialist committee, or the
Yeah,
CIA, or
yeah. But the point
whatever.
is that there's an arbitrarily complex, and I guess in that case it's appropriate to say a black box process is happening that can be arbitrarily complex that ultimately comes back with what they're going to say in the group chat or what other API call or other type of activity that this agent is going to take.
Yeah, but also um, that group chat uh, between Israel and Iran, each entity
may have a number of bodies in that. Maybe the CIA wants to chat with MI6, and then inside of MI6 and CIA, there are a number of committees and analysts
Yeah,
and so on.
yeah.
But it's a mirror. It's the same model.
Same model. Same model works for all those things. Okay. And then, whilst the transmissions part, as sort of the next generation of chain joining, whilst this model probably needs a bit more kicking, this seems to work for now, for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this,
It's just
this,
scale is the thing on that one.
yeah, we'll see how we go with this, and then we'll work out some solutions for scale. I'm confident there are solutions because IPFS and BitTorrent and all that have managed to do it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so, but anyway, I think for our use case right now, like, why don't we pick a number and we'll say, max group size 100 for now, and then we'll just, if we start hitting that, we'll ask some deeper questions.
Yeah. Can we make it 128? Just because I get nervous with non-powers of 2.
What is the max group size in WhatsApp and in Signal? Yeah. Either way, there'll be some number. We'll just pick it as a target, and then we'll see where the
you go.
performance degrades.
1,024 members. 1,020. See, power 2. If in doubt, go for power 2. Avoid primes like the plague.
But 2's a prime.
Oh, damn you! Yes.
Anyway, whatever. Okay. Signal. Ooh, that's a nice round number there.
No, I reckon they've rounded it down. They've rounded it down.
Okay, so we'll pick. So basically, the stress test that I need to pass is 1,000 members in the group chat.
Yep.
And if it can work efficiently at that model, then it's good enough, right?
Well, to be honest, to start with, we could go for 256.
All right, well, for starters, I'll go for like 5 so that we'll get it working first, and then we'll talk about
eight.
Yeah. All right. So then, how do I discover people? Discovery needs a service, right? Like a discovery service where you would go and register with to be discoverable. Or
this discovery sounds a lot like a handshake, which sounds a lot like a chat, which I say hi and you say hi back. And
well, that's an interesting concept there. So you're saying that almost all of the interactions with the system could be modeled as a chat in some way.
Sounds like it, doesn't it? It's like a ping, and you ping back.
I saw a super interesting diagram on the internet the other day where a guy was describing, it was a sequence diagram, but he had made it in terms of chat and plain English, and it's like Alice is like, "Hey Bob, are you there?" And Bob's like, "Yes, I am." And Alice is like, "Hey, what's your secret password, Bob?" And it's like, "I don't want to tell you yet. Let's make one up." And it seemed easier to follow because it was a chat. And so in that light, you could argue that any group can be used to represent any arbitrary sequence diagram.
Yeah, because really what we're talking about is comms between groups. If they want to open up communications, they're just like, "Hey, you want to talk to me?" Go,
Hey,
"Ah,
yeah.
sure."
Okay, so discoverability
all the way
will
down.
need to create an entity, or it will need to run a service where it's like the well-known friend introduction service, and then when you boot your install, we'll have already included that identity in there so that you can safely talk to it, and that's where you go to find your people.
Yeah, and obviously there's that could be refined to being coincident. If you talk to this group, you probably should be invited to this group.
Right.
but the handshake
Right,
is still the
right.
same.
Like you can do very fun access controls there where you're like you can come in if your degrees of separation from the members of the group average less than 3.
Right,
You know, because it's like
right,
all your
right.
people are here anyway. You shouldn't have to knock on that door. The door's open to you, right? Because you can have like
Exactly.
agentic doorkeepers on the gate where you can rock up to a thing and be like, "Hey, I want to come in," and it's like,
Yeah,
well,
these guys are talking to us about a subject that you're talking about,
mm,
which would be lovely. Um, Especially if it was nuanced. It's like these guys have got a problem that you've got a solution for. You should talk, and then handshake, and then you've got a connection.
all right. So okay, so it sounds like friends discovery is pretty easy. We can then have like little naps that let you upload your contacts list if you want, which allows you to find people by email address if they chose to advertise that, and all those kinds of standard table stakes features.
Yep.
Then we've got this chat model that we've just sort of given a pretty good kick to. That sounds like it works, honestly.
It does. It does. Um, yeah, I give it a pretty hard kicking there, and negotiating a peace deal, I think, is quite good.
It's about as hot as
Keeping
it
it,
gets, eh?
keeping,
Like, it's like,
yeah,
who's running that group chat? Is it really a
yeah.
signal chat, or is it, you know,
NATO and the Soviet countries try to come to terms on something that they agree on. It's
yeah,
about as hard as it gets
yeah.
because you've got nested uh, entities, um, each of whom need to come to an agreement, and an agreement can only be between two identities.
Right.
You
So
can't
you,
you can't you can't have side deals. A side deal would just mean one entity, one entity deciding to split off and becoming their own group as a separate identity, and then it resolves to the same problem.
so you'd end up with this kind of thing where you've got like a group chat between the UK and the EU, and you're like,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But inside of EU and UK, God knows what the complexity is. It doesn't matter.
Right, but it can be reduced down to these single voices, which
Right.
touches on another subject, right? Like, one of the good things about AI is that you can speak to the average voice or the consensus voice, right? And so
I know the fuzzy bit, that
if
I'm
you
really
could set
excited
up a
about.
DAO for a project like Satoshi Island, where there's a control group where people are chatting and curating the knowledge and the direction that the DAO takes, but then anybody can come and have a chat directly to the DAO, and it represents not the people in the control group, but it represents the reason of the knowledge that they approved mixed with the operational intelligence of the bot. That starts to get pretty cool
I know.
because you could
Yeah,
roll it up to the stage of a country where you could reduce a country down to a single chatbot and be like, "Hi, this is the UK speaking," right? And it's like it.
exactly. And the reason I'm quite excited about that idea is democracy has. Okay, so this is a bit of a rabbit hole. Um, but democracy has its um, limits because ideally you'd want every citizen to be fully informed about every area of policy for the government that they want to take years of experience in each area and then come up to considered level. It doesn't work that way.
No, right. And again,
They
that's
chip in
the ideal market.
half ideas on one policy. It's like I don't like immigrants, or I really want social health care or whatever. But that's not the whole thing. But the average of the whole thing is fuzzy, and you still need to continue to make decisions. And the frequency of these decisions, is every general election. Not very good.
Not very good.
But if you could have it every few minutes,
and everyone's
Yeah.
like chipping in.
Yeah. Yeah. And people could like suddenly update their view on the fly when something happens that surprised them. Like they're like,
Right.
wait,
Yeah.
I did not mean to call in the
I'm not
National
into
Guard.
that.
That's not what I meant.
Don't send in the National Guard. I just,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
really that's like how you want democracy to work, right? Is this agentic system that largely just leaves you alone, and then sometimes you can get up in arms about something and it will adapt. But
Right.
most of the time it just ticks over.
Exactly. And up to now, I was just too clunky to do manually. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying we run a nation of this, but you can run a project. You can come to consensus.
Yeah, but you can, even that's useful. Like you can run a group of people and or information sensors as though it was a single entity, which makes it easy to talk to. Now,
Yeah.
a simple, interesting example for me is that you can identitize or entityize a natural resource like a river or a lake. And you can now, it can speak to you the same way that a human can. And it can,
Oh, that's brilliant.
you know,
Of
because
course.
it just embodies all this information and sensory data and intelligence. And now it
So if you
speaks
had
to
an
you.
AI linked up to a river that was just looking at, I don't know what the level was of lead or pollutants
Sensor
or
data,
fish or something,
forecast data, historical
then-
data,
and then has a voice.
Cameras.
Of course, it doesn't matter.
rainfall.
It's
And then
just-
you're talking to the river. And then when you want to do things that require multiple types of resource consent, like you're like, I want to build a dam, and then the river's gonna have something to say about that. The mountain's gonna have something to say about that. The farmland will have something to say about that. And so you get these things that typically look like a union, like the farmers union or the local Edinburgh pub owners union,
But it's
but
like
they can get a single voice.
It's a just-in-time union because anyone can wade in. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
if you build this dam, I'm going to get power. Power be good because I get
Right.
air conditioning.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah,
It's,
I need power because I'm freezing my bollocks off, and like that's
Yeah. And again, back to the original question, your file structure here supports that.
yeah, it does actually. Funny enough, and I think it does that not because it's cool, just because it's minimal, and that model, multi-channel interlaced communication, represents pretty much. It's like it represents intelligence. It's like why did LLMs arrive and they only produce strings of text? Why can humans only deal in strings of text? Is that just naturally what intelligence is? It is only capable of a linear string? Like,
Well, let's think about that. Networks can deal with nonlinear streams, but they have to reconstruct in a time-ordered fashion packets after the fact. But they're still
you
ordering
could argue that
time-ordered
time,
packets.
in its purest, most undistorted form, time is just a linear stream of discrete events.
Yeah, and so everyone understands that. Discussions happen in the kind of you talk, you don't. Now, sometimes I'll talk over you, but that's just
That's
I'm
fine.
surely slightly.
Yeah, and that's part of that consensus finding mechanism.
Yeah. I think this works. I think this works really well.
It's simple, is what I like, and it's no wasted data. Like each piece of
Yeah.
information is reused without change in the destination from the source. So
Yeah.
however I stored my messages is going to be the exact thing that you're going to store to represent my message. It doesn't get, stuffed in a database, pulled out of a database. It's the same.
And also, it's pretty robust against Byzantine attacks as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
So the only thing you
I
need.
retrospectively changed what I said last week. It's
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go,
So
no.
yeah, that
didn't say
feels
that.
pretty easy to implement, and all you'd really need to add to that is First of all, if you just do this gossip thing where like everyone's sort of periodically sending what the other guy said so that you can cross check it, and then you just implement a slashing mechanism where you can construct, using this protocol, a transclusion that shows clearly a Byzantine act from someone, where you've got a signed version of this message here and a signed version of this message here, and it's different, and you're like, that's a slashable offense, and then
Right.
you submit it and you get your reward.
And also you can disregard in whatever the next decision is going to be.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right. That's right. That's right.
You know, you're fucking around here, and so
Right.
I'm going to disregard that
Right.
for the next decision.
Disregard and punished. Okay, well that's pretty cool, man. I was really struggling with that, but it feels pretty clear now.
It feels pretty solid. You know, I was saying coming at it fresh, but with a fresh eye, that looks pretty solid.
Yeah, and it serves all your use cases, right? Agents, your individual personal use, group chats, DAOs.
Yep.
The whole lot is all just the
And
same thing.
nesting all the way down as well. Yeah.
It's just the same thing over and over. All right, so what I would do when I use this thing, I would start off with, I would come sailing in to see you. I would go find my friend, find Mr. Maxwell. You get added under agents, or friends, which is supposed to go there. I'd start having a chat with you. It's a new thread. I could start a new thread on a different topic that's with you.
Yep.
I could invite some bots into a particular thread. How would that work? Would that make it a group chat, or would it still be between you and me? Could I?
Well, you and me is a group chat of 2.
Yeah, and then if I add in another agent, then in our current model, we'd been treating that as a separate thing. So we were saying that threads were children of the groups that created them. But if I'm in a thread and then I change the constituency of the group, now what happens?
It's the same, because now you've just got additional entities coming into something that's already established, which is the group.
But if I've got 5 threads, 4 threads are just you and me, and then in the 5th thread I add a new entity, the group representation is now changed because the group is different.
But only for that group. The other 4 groups are not.
Other 4 threads.
Sorry. Well, the other 4 threads are groups because it's you and I.
But so you're thinking of each thread as a group? There's no such thing as, so each time I start a new thread, it's actually starting a new group.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so like, if I talk to you and then I want to start a new thread and then add someone else, that's the thread is the group, and so adding a new person is just like, that's just the group changing.
Right. And also, interesting enough, what flops out of that is okay. Let me think a sec. So you remember your old example of someone interacting with multi-chain in North Korea, stores it all on USB, takes 3 months to escape,
Yep.
Sticks the USB back in.
Yep.
How would that work with transclusions? Because
just fine. It worked perfectly fine. So I could, how it would happen, the best case I can think of to explain that would be that there's 2 collaborators in different sides of North and South Korea. In North Korea. And they are having a chat with, Mossad as a member, and themselves, they get cut off from the internet that would give them access to Mossad, and so they can still keep chatting, and so their transclusions are going back and forth through the internal North Korea network, and then ultimately when the USB stick gets ferried across into China and it makes connection back to Mossad, all those chats go into Mossad too, and then
Yeah, it does work well, doesn't it?
then the USB receives all of the Mossad chats that happen in the meantime, and then that gets ferried back, and then it reconciles up. And so all I got to do really to surface that to the users is to present a slightly modified version of the blue tick, the double blue tick mechanism in WhatsApp, where it can show things like delivered to who,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
age, all those sorts of things. And so you can
Right.
see what the state of the chat was at different times, but it runs perfectly fine in this offline mode, this dark edge mode.
You're right. But the identity. Okay, so I'm trying to break it here. This might be too in the weeds, but the identity that represents the group talking to another group is making its assessment based on the information available. If
Yeah,
some of that information is not verifiable,
yeah.
do they disregard that?
What's an example of some not verifiable information?
So, so you've got
Either way, I don't think it matters. The way that you code or prompt up how the self system works within that agent determines what it will act upon, and you'll need to choose what you want it to do if some information is not verifiable or not, and what does verifiable mean.
yeah, that's true, because
That's a prompting
the
problem.
hashes there is just to verify if you're like cool with it. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
guys,
so
dropped off the grid.
my job is just getting you confidential and correct data, like integral data. So I deal with integrity.
Verifiable, but not necessarily
Yeah,
verified.
I deal with delivery, integrity, and confidentiality, and all that other stuff is your problem, someone else's problem. It's like,
Yeah,
you know, that's one layer up.
that's right. Yeah. So it's verifiable, but it doesn't need to be verified if you're cool with going with what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that works.
All right. Well, that's it's kind of fun, man. It's pretty minimal.
That is pretty minimal. I mean, that's. I'm trying to give it a good kicking there.
It's pretty tiny.
Yeah.
Pretty tiny.
You can do anything between.
You might be able to do
negotiating
more.
peace talks between Israel and Iran, and
Yeah.
deciding what you're having for dinner.
You can be part of some very hostile group chats.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I guess what I'm trying to poke at, it's much more universal than just chats, because this could be drone instructions.
Yes.
Like, it really
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you're sending on these. If each folder represents a channel, it really doesn't matter what you're
Well, I
sending
think-
on the channel.
The thing that unlocks it is that constant iterative ability for a group to instruct or ask something of another group. That's not something that you can do at the moment. At the moment, if you take TFU, they are constantly chatting backwards and forwards, and it's very difficult to come at any random time slice about what is the consensus.
All right.
What do we think?
I got a different model for how to do the group voice thing. If you just simply started your group and then you added the spokesperson agent, and the spokesperson agent was wired up to be triggered by what's happening in that group with different weightings for members and all the stuff, all the configuration options we spoke about, and then it then is given the power to do something, that's a way simpler thing, because now you don't need um, the entity doesn't have to be the holder or the controller of the group chat. It's just a member of the group chat that decided to listen in. The group having no central service is really just like whoever's online, sort of,
Mhm.
and then you could then join that agent to multiple different groups where it would be tasked with balancing the views of all these different groups and then speaking in a unified way, perhaps,
Yeah,
lots of fun stuff. But
but
that's a simpler way, right?
yeah. But it also allows for time slicing in that if everyone agrees on the rules, the decision made by the spokesperson agent at any one time is based on everything that is known, knowing that it can change. And so you don't need to come to a final consensus. And this is
Wait,
often,
sorry, can you say that again? I didn't understand that.
yeah. So the spokesperson agent is looking at everything that's happened,
Right.
and so it can make decisions, it can talk to other groups at every point. More stuff happens, may change that point of view, and
Mm-hmm.
so it moves on and talks to other groups because it's consensus. The problem with consensus is what we're trying to do is everyone agrees, but you don't need to get an agreement if someone says, "All right, okay, so most people agree with this. Oh, there's this outlier here. Okay, I'll consider that. I'll give a fuzzy answer."
Did you mean like it can still be useful while it's indeterminate?
Yeah,
Right.
fuzzy answers.
Well, deeper than that. Like it's 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 still useful even during disagreement or disinterest, where it can still answer you like, well, half the people think this and the other half think that, and we haven't been able to get onto it. So,
Right, right,
right?
exactly. We literally have not reached consensus.
Yeah.
We're
And
maybe
it can
never going
still,
to
it
reach
can, yeah,
consensus.
and it should stay at about, because there'll be lots of other stuff you have reached consensus on, and it
Yeah,
can work with that. But then it hits this other thing that's like, look, I don't really know. That's not my area. We're
yeah.
still kind of waiting. But here's another interesting thing that model can entertain is to set up the AI to be a vote tiebreaker, so that you can set up. Normally,
Ah,
people hate having
you're
the
right. You're
humans
right.
being
You're
perfectly
right.
balanced. Like,
You're you're
you
right.
know,
Because you never get consensus is an illusion. Um, it's incredibly rare where everyone in a group actually agrees and is completely
yeah,
in
it's
line with
consensus
everyone
is
else.
more like shorthand for like we're gonna mob bash you into going along with like,
Right. Exactly. But if you have a trusted agent, which is the whole model where you kind of flop to an AI and the game rules are, hey, this AI is going to speak to us, you can have as much argument as you want in the background. In fact, it will be enriched by more argument and
yeah, more
more
arguments
counter.
better.
Yeah. Um, and but would still be able to act as a rational identity with other things because it filters all that and it says, okay, so we're negotiating this piece. We agree on the first four items. Items 5 through 9, not so much, but here's what we're leaning to at the moment. We need you to move on this position, as an example.
Right. That's a fun one. So that means that like the oil and gas reconciliation project takes on a
Oh
bit of a.
yeah. Oh yeah. Um, that would be good because the coming to complete consensus was a complete pain in the arse.
Well, because like they couldn't, right? Like the fact that they even needed a system meant that they weren't in consensus. And so if you set up a they didn't want to give the power to a third party, but they had to because that was the only way that someone would make a decision and be like, this thing.
Right.
But if it was an AI that was run in lockstep between multiple parties, like now
It's
there's
like,
no third party. It's intelligent and it can do tiebreakers.
it's fuzzy consensus.
Because that,
Isn't it?
yeah, like that's the thing that the blockchain could never solve is that it still doesn't tell you what you agree on. Like if you
Mhm.
disagree, all it does is just make it clear. It doesn't, it doesn't help
Right,
you
right,
decide
exactly.
anything.
It's yeah, exactly. We are split, and
Yeah,
nobody agrees.
yeah. But if you had with an AI added in there as tiebreaker, that's pretty fucking fascinating because you're like, well, we're all going to sign up to this system. Most of the time, we'll sort out our issues ourselves. But in the case that we can't, it goes to a judiciary, so to speak, which is this AI. And
And then that's the decision. And then the interesting thing is, roll on the clock one time tick, more information comes through. That AI has all the information about what's happened previously in the last decision, and can rectify mistakes.
so actually, that's taking the model that we spoke about for the ambient attribution agent being this executor plus a reconciler and a knowledge base to being generalized to being a decision making system, decision either forcing the decision or supporting the decision, and you could program that for anywhere that has conflict, right? Because that's really what the oil and gas project was
Yeah,
about. It was like there's conflict, and we're trying to come up with rules to solve the conflict.
fuzzy
And
consensus, exactly.
but
Um,
the same ambient attribution bot can be prompted slightly different. It was like you are a fair arbiter of oil and gas trades, and that's the only prompt you need to
mhm,
give it,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then both sides
Right.
can petition. You can petition in private so that you can test your petitions before you vocalize them publicly because there might be some
Right,
social
which
cost to that. And then once
works
you're sure
perfectly
you've
with the
got your wording
structure.
right, you're like, with the utmost respect, dear arbiter, I see that you have settled this trade as blah 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 blah, and you can say some fancy ass shit, and then you'll know that the arbiter is going to swing slightly your way because you were telling the truth or it was a good point. The other party can now respond, right? And now you've got this excellent thickening of the system where it's becoming highly customized to both parties, and they're never going to want to leave that because it's got all that angst, all those phone calls, all those lunches, those dinners, those everything is all being captured in the state of this knowledge base. And they're like, no, no, we're good. We didn't reach consensus. We reached, what's the word for that? Amicability, stability,
Yeah,
right?
it's yeah, yeah.
It's
It's a
not
bit like
consensus, but it is something
is
satisfying.
consensus is too high a bar.
Mm. It's
Um,
too autistic. It's like
yeah,
this pure perfect thing, and it's like no thanks.
exactly. And it's like you end up, with the 100 Years' War.
Yeah, it's an either all or nothing thing, and so this fuzzy consensus, I like what you're calling it. That I don't. I think it needs a richer, more precise term, but the the intention is good. It's like you can be satiated without being in consensus where the bot closed out the last remaining
Yeah,
differences
it's
and you were
it's
both like, yep, fair enough, fair enough.
it's like what's it? It's like being content. You don't need to be happy.
No.
You do need to be content.
Yeah, or like that feeling you get after a fair fight.
Yeah, because opposite of content is contentious. You know,
Contentious.
um, and but being
That's
content is like
contentious.
fair one, fair one. I don't really agree about fair. Yeah, which is what we're after.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is what just flopped out. Listen to you talk there. Petitions are just another message in the group chat
just to the
Oh, that's
overarching
right. That's
agent.
right. So even now we're seeing the embodiment of such a system, which would be a chat where you've got BP, Shell, and fucking E and I and whatever in this group chat, and
They're
then
just talking to the group chat. Well,
yeah, and then
the
there's the
overarching
arbiter.
thing.
There's the arbiter agent, which is sitting there too, and then it's like, hey, E and I, this trade came through in Italian, but actually, you know, we agreed that it was this and that, and it, right, like,
Yeah, yeah. And the balance of, currency exchange changed
right.
this time,
Right,
and
and
the
so what
agent
you're
will
able to
go,
do
"Ah,
then
okay, fair enough."
for the oil and gas model is you'd have a bunch of direct person-to-person chats, which is where your direct trades are happening.
Yeah.
You'd do that together in private. When there was a conflict, you'd then transclude that information into the chat that was between the two of you plus the arbiter AI.
Yeah.
Where you could know with some certainty that the arbiter AI was only being run in lockstep between the infrastructure between the two of you. So you know
Yeah.
that that's the actual thing. There's a central publishing agent that publishes the arbiter, which is how the fees are collected and other things like that. But publishing the arbiter and publishing the substrate comes from a central authority that everyone agrees to use. And then when you do things like novations, you're just like, Patronus has entered the chat, and then
Mhm.
you're just having chats with
Right. And if you have a problem, talk to the peacemaker.
the
Or
Peacemaker. That's a great name for that agent, the Peacemaker.
and that's the rules of the game. If you're not happy, go back to the old way of, calling up your lawyer, which is a lot more expensive.
This was one of the most famous guns in all the world.
Oh, that's right. That's where it came from. I remember now. Sorry, it was Colt, wasn't it? This is a nice piece of engineering.
Well, it's
Really nice
it's
piece of
not
engineering.
it's not the gun. It was the process. This is the first production line gun.
Yeah. Yeah. But the first high quality production line, because everything was artisan built before now. But now you had a rifled gun where each unit was exactly the same. Everyone, well, everyone who used it agreed you could use a certain caliber. I think it was Colt that brought caliber into it, because previously it was just size of shot,
Right.
and you'd melt your own balls,
Yeah,
load
right.
them, stick them, and who knows. But yeah, and suddenly,
The Peacemaker. Right. So we would produce an agent called the Peacemaker that was specialized in arbitrating oil and gas deals that was designed so that it could be run in a way where it was run on shared infrastructure only between the participants. So you set up a group chat. In the background, the machinery kicks in to both make sure you've got the same version of the Peacemaker. It's looking at the same hash of the knowledge base and all that, which you get from the central source. We like, this is the dispute knowledge base. Okay, let's go. And then
yeah,
the benefit is all the other arguments and disputes that all the other members have had are all distilled down into that knowledge base. You can even have a fucking consortium that is like a big group chat with everyone where they argue over what they're going to kick in and kick out of the knowledge base,
right,
right. And then the Peacemaker and the substrate collect fees from the transactions that they settle or arbitrate on. Or hell, you could only like charge when there's a problem. You're like, here's a system, use it free. And you can use it to reconcile all you like, but when you call on the Peacemaker, it costs you X. So
yeah, sure.
pays for the system.
And that kind of arbitration is what law and policy and government is all meant to be
Yeah. You
doing.
probably you
But
wouldn't
it's
have to charge very much to make good money on that because the
a hell
overheads
of a
are
lot.
small. Like the
Exactly.
overheads are just our own substrate that we're going to make anyway,
Yeah.
and then a little bit of admin and running around. The fees are not that big.
Well, some of the fees at the moment, I'll give you one example that I saw the other day, where a YouTuber who's a lawyer had commented on there was this guy on a bike and a van, cuts the bike off, he gets toppled off, um, and the guy on the bike posts up his bike cam, and then gets sued for copyright infringement because they had a logo on the side of the van, and he was getting sued for like 40,000. So this lawyer channel then responds to that saying, "Well, that's obviously stupid." Uses the video from the bike cam, which had permission to do, but which also had the logo of the van on the side. And then the that second order, that lawyer, also got sued, and he was getting sued for £50,000 for the use of the logo second hand, because some dude got kicked off his bike by a van who was like doing a bad left turn.
Wait, was the van? So was the van actually the logoed van was in the wrong and nearly killed this dude, and that's why
Yeah,
they were suing? Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And they started off suing the bike, and then when this second party lawyer guy YouTubed it saying this is stupid, there's no case to answer, then he gets sued for 50 grand. And it went up to the High Court because he's a lawyer and he's a YouTuber, so he's probably got quite a lot of time on his hands. So it went all up to the High Court, and the High Court threw it out. But just before throwing it out, because the van owner didn't want the name to be put into public record, because up to that point it was now a court settlement. It's like,
Right.
right, take all the videos down. I want nothing to do with this, and I'll give you 40 grand to do that. The, the lawyer said, no, I'm quite happy, thank you very much. And I'm trying to build my YouTube channel, and so fuck off with your 40 grand. All you've got to do is remove the case, and they remove the case. What's it called? SLAP. SLAPP. It meant something. It was like basically, suing in order to stop something that was in the public interest to show.
Right.
If you Google now, SLAPP.
Yeah.
But the point being, there we got 4 parties trying to come to consensus, and it cost each party quite a lot of time.
Oh, right. So you're saying that actually the true embodiment of Law Machine is a group chat where there's an arbiter bot that's sort of trying to keep everyone fair and reasonable,
like Judge Judy, yeah,
like Judge Judy, and then you can pay to have that bot in there with varying degrees of human backing or human deliberation,
yeah,
right? And then you can have your AI lawyer can argue, like the AI lawyers can just grind against each other with this judiciary bot until people feel like they've spent enough tokens, and then you're like, look, 8 times out of 10, this is how the cookie crumbles. That's probably how it's going to go if it goes to the real human court, and everyone's
exactly. Because if you look at all 4 entities involved in this, all of them were losing time and money.
Yeah. So
arguing the
right.
costs
So
about
this group
something
chat
which-
thing is probably more powerful than we gave credit for, actually, because it's how you present. Ah, fuck. Someone help me explain it. It's how you present deeply multi-agent systems, adversarial multi-agent systems
Right.
in a way that you can interact with. Because I don't know, you can have all your agents chained up and hooked into this one chat, and I wouldn't know. It's just you,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the same with the me, but also the concept of this arbitration unit that's like in there. Like, imagine how much countries would save if the government published the arbitration agent and was like, this is the court now,
Yeah.
and we
And
oversee this bot and we make sure that it works, and here's your appeal conditions and systems, but ultimately you can go to court in an AI courtroom, and within about 30 minutes and $5 worth of tokens, you can get a ruling.
isn't that Law Machine? It's open source, very simple. Anyone who wants to try and game it, go for it.
Uh,
Everything's
I
recorded.
guess that's not what I was thinking of Law Machine. That's probably the altruistic end game of Law Machine. What I was hoping Law Machine was that exact system, but one party doesn't have the AI.
Oh, so without the arbitration bit,
Well,
without the decision
if
bit.
you turn up and you can model the situation with the arbitration that you know is closely tuned to the current judicial
Oh no, that
status.
still works though. No, that still works.
No, it doesn't. It's different because it's one-sided. It's using the Law Machine as a weapon, not a peacemaker. It's saying
Yeah,
that,
no, I'm
yeah.
saying it's the same. It's the same because you're just moving down one level. You could still get a class action suit or get all sorts of information. You could involve as many bots as you
Yeah,
want,
actually,
and
fuck,
then get the
dude, you're
bot to talk
right.
to the
You're
actual real
right,
world.
because there's this interesting situation that happened in New Zealand that, as far as I'm aware, hadn't happened before. Like, there was a shitload of rain came down in one
Okay.
day. In one day, we got like a year's worth of rain, and no one had seen it before. And then all these houses fell down, and
Uh-huh.
and then there's people suing the government for earthquake cover, for like natural disaster cover. It's been 2 and a bit years. People still fighting these things, man. And the big groups of people, like hundreds, maybe thousands of people, are still stuck. And so they have like Facebook groups where they talk about it and try and figure it out. Some people are brave and resource strong and they can actually fight it in the courts. But a lot of these poor people are just like, they lost their home. The insurance said we're not paying. The government said we're not
Oh, that
paying. And
sucks.
now they're
Oh my
like,
god.
well, and then this is the worst part. They get offered some shitty half-ass settlement and they know they can't fight for more. And so they have to begrudgingly take this pittance,
Mm.
and their lives are ruined because the rain came. And there's lots of angles you could take on that. You could be like, well, the council shouldn't have allowed you to build there. The land survey people that surveyed it and said it was safe, where are they now? So there's all these things, right? And so what I'm glimpsing at from what you're saying is that the chat-based interface could be used where all these people can just have a mishmash paddywhack chat about all the different stuff that's going on. They can share their files, they can add this and that. You can have arbitrators that are grinding to try and figure out the essence of the case. You're doing simulations on outcomes and giving, likelihoods, and then you're using that to raise capital on, where you're like, well, we ran a simulation, and with this particular guy, we think he's got a great shot, but he needs another 150 grand to get it to court, and to have the other party believe that it's going to court. And now suddenly, like, the confidence that you could have walking into court and being like, I have run this simulation to death, and I am very confident at how this is going to go. There's no angle that hasn't been considered. And even if there is, you just chuck it back in the machine, probably while you're still in court, regrind all the outcomes, and then you're like, pass, fail, oh, no, we better, let's cut a deal,
Yeah.
let's get out of here.
Precisely. And if there's new information, chuck it in. The the layer of the peacemaker is your representative. is your King's Counsel, who will talk to the judge. It doesn't have to be the judge.
Right.
In fact,
So you mean like it could be the judge could be a simulation, a simulated
or
judge.
the judge could be a real world judge. And even inside of the class action, you might have two groups that disagree, but they agree to, all have their own peacemakers, and the peacemakers come to the conclusions of the group underneath them, talk to each other, and then talk to the one-up peacemaker, who's the one who talks to the real world judge. Same structure.
I don't understand why the two levels of peacemaker.
If there's two groups that disagreed,
Hmm.
then you would have.
You mean a class
know,
action where it's like class versus class as opposed to class versus single entity?
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Say if there's one group that wanted to settle just as quickly as possible, and another group that wanted to maximize their payout.
Oh, so within a class action, you got two splinter groups, one that wants to push on to the end and the other one that's happy for anything.
But they both want it to be dealt with, as fairly as possible.
Right. And then you're saying that you could use the arbitrator to figure out the best compromise between those groups that gave the best simulated outcome because they have to act as one, the simulator for the real court is being run multiple times while each side internally tries to figure out the best stable position for them to both settle on, right?
Yeah, and then you've got the opposition.
Okay, that's super powerful.
Yeah,
because
the opposition will be throwing shit in, saying, "Oh, how about this?"
Yeah.
And then both sides will, then trickle down.
That's super powerful.
And then back up.
That's super powerful because the vast majority of class actions or any kind of group activity falls apart because the group can't reach consensus. And I think tonight has shown us we need a better word for that, because consensus is impossible and an illusion. But the group never gets to act in unison because they couldn't reach suitable stability or congruence or collaborate.
They couldn't all be content with what,
they couldn't, and the breakdowns are often communication related, or like they split up over a minor issue even though they agreed on the major issues. And if each member of that group was an AI and had unlimited communication internally with the group, they wouldn't reach the same decision that a human group normally does. Like they would not, if they were rational agents, they would not behave like they do. And so what we're seeing here is that this group chat with arbitration in it can allow groups of people to come together and rapidly settle their differences in a very, very clean and efficient way. Plus, each member of the group can talk to the group like it was a single person, because the AI represents all voices, and now you're talking direct to the group, which is not possible before. Just like you couldn't talk to a mountain, you couldn't talk to a river, you can't talk to a group,
Right.
But now you can talk to this embodiment of a thing. And that what that should mean is that these endeavors that often fell apart because of the lack of cohesion and coordination can start to actually take shape and be done. And now an area where that really, really shines is indigenous peoples.
Oh, God, yes. Yes. If there's ever a power gradient,
right,
there is one.
And so now when you think about the Africans in Tanzania, if you said to them, look, every single person has this amount of complimentary credits from the government because we want to hear what you have to say, and then now you can speak to the tribe because the tribe is embodied in this AI. And so long as everyone agrees to play ball, the hardest thing is to speak to these tribes, because you're like, who the fuck am I talking to? Who's in charge here?
Yeah.
with this model, you can start to get that, right? Like it's this virtual thing, and you're like, I'm talking to you, and yeah,
But the interesting thing is, this is just flopped out of attribution as
A special case of a general model that we've just been talking about.
I know attribution is actually just one. It's got the dials turned all the way in some areas. Like it's like no privileged users, so like completely permissionless. Number two, it's attribution for contribution, right? Which is
which is just data, facts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then that's kind of it, dude. Like, man, what the fuck have we missed? Like, it's so simple.
It's like general relativity. It's general case of
General.
a special case, which is attribution. But the really interesting thing is it kind of flops out of that structure.
That is fucking interesting. That's why, like, I've always found that fascinating. These models of chats that are like, you know, here's a whole country. I've always found that fascinating that you could make an entity that represented a country. Yeah.
Well, generally speaking, because it's nested, depending on who wants to turn up and, contribute information, it's the same all the way down and all the way up. I think you're really onto something here, man.
Well, we're onto something. I mean, that was not me in isolation there. Okay, so that's pretty fucking cool, man.
What's the general model? So whenever you want to bring people together where consensus is unlikely, but contentness is good enough.
Right. Satisfaction can be found.
Yeah.
And there's a benefit to all to find it.
As fast as possible with
right.
least cost.
And to hold it too. So like keep adjusting and adapting as the environment changes.
Yes.
Keep the contentment.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's the key. The speed is key.
And then everyone gets back to, fishing or going on long walks instead of these class action suits. Which,
this tragic stuff, right? Burning so much money, so much time.
Some of these guys gets consumed with it.
And and a lot of it's just wrong. Like, there's nothing worse than just feeling powerless, and then someone offers you a shitty deal,
and you go, "Fuck it, I'll just sell."
And you got to take it, and then you're like, it just feels you just got outmuscled. Like it's not right.
Outmuscled that. Yeah, exactly. It's because if these fishermen after the Gulf of Mexico oil slick, you got BP on one hand with 2-figure billions in the bank, up against a fisherman who's been wiped out.
Yeah, it's there's I wish I knew a better way to say it, but it's like there's a thing in nature where, like, if you just got wiped out, to get justice, you also have to then have enough in reserve and enough wherewithal and stamina and other qualities to go up and do something about it too.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like this double coincidence of wants that it favors the belligerent. It favors the aggressor.
You probably don't know about this case, but it is exactly on point here. So there was a software package put into the post office in the UK.
Yeah, I heard about that one. You told me about this one.
Yeah. And there was one guy who was retired had enough time, and he was just one of these guys who just kept on buggering on. He didn't have many resources,
I think he's just been made. I think he's just been made an OBE or a knight or something. I don't know.
Mm.
Anyway, he got through the entire process, but it took him, I think it was 12 years.
Yeah, right. And who's got that
S-
time? It should not take that time.
But also the people who didn't have that time, who just had to, settle,
Just
or
eat
in
it.
some
Yeah.
cases, they didn't have the legal representation. There was
Mm.
2 suicides
Mm.
associated with it.
Mm.
I mean, and he was leading, just, it's like Joan of Arc, heading off on one just by himself, but
Yeah.
only because he had the time and he had the character and the
Yeah,
story.
so that was the ideal use case that I envisaged for Law Machine. Now, the version you said is like the steady state where everyone has Law Machine and they settle their disputes inside Law Machine, because it's quick and it's cheap and it's usually the right thing. But in the meantime was where I felt, sure, it's what's the word for it? It maybe not the most selfless thing to do, but to be able to use it as a weapon to help the downtrodden, because it seems to favor the
Yes.
downtrodden better than it favors the incumbent.
Well, yeah, it evens out the gradient, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
tokens
yeah,
are
yeah. That's
cheaper
right.
than lawyers.
That's right. That's right. And so, if you were already in power, Law Machine would probably not be good for you, because it would show you that these people that you're overpowering could, if push came to shove, if they were backed enough, they could overthrow you, and you kind of know that anyway. So Law Machine is like, you're like, fuck off. Like, all you'd
Yeah,
really try to do is find the most unfair thing you could use. But
yeah,
to the everyday guy, especially if you don't even know how the law works, you don't know how the details of the case work, you don't know a lot of things. Plus, if you're a class action thing where everyone may be owed $50 and who's got the time, right? This is the kind of tool you want, man.
yeah. Any group which has got a large number of people who have been shat upon by, someone with much more money,
Mm.
then Law Machine is going to help.
That's a
Because
very indignant, arousing thing, right? Is where you just get out muscled. And it's like the fact that someone has more money doesn't have anything to do with whether or not who was in the right or who was in the wrong. And
right,
yet
of
the
course it's
outcome depends on how much
yeah,
money did I earn before this random event happened to me, before I randomly collided with this guy in this van on this bike. How
yeah,
much money I'd made up until that point was what determined the outcome of that, what should be a mechanical, very unemotional ruling.
but the thing is, the law is there to be seen as, blindfolded. That statue with
Mm,
the balance and the sword,
mm,
blindfolded, thing on top of the Old Bailey. Um, but in reality, it's not that at all. It is not balanced. If you are, if there is an information gradient, if there is a power gradient, if there's a money gradient, then the law is not going to serve you well.
yeah, these fucking scales are crooked.
Yeah, yeah, and
They
it's
don't.
critic because sorry, go on.
No, I think we're just.
Sorry, yeah, we're kind of going around in circles, but
Yeah, there's nothing new
I'm
coming out of
agreeing.
this.
I'm agreeing vociferously with you.
Yeah, we're
Um,
both agreeing. So
yeah, that one.
how
Yeah, there it is.
how
There she
would
is.
you how would that picture look in an AI world?
Well, hopefully that picture would look exactly the same. That picture in the real world right now does not look like that.
Hmm. Where's the blindfold?
Well, this is golden. This is not on top of the Old Bailey.
Just the Old Bailey.
It's Old Bailey. Is it golden? I thought it was blindfolded.
Old Bailey Statue of Justice.
Oh, okay. I always thought it had a blindfold.
Yeah, I thought it did too.
Yeah,
This one.
interesting. Yeah, okay. There's another one.
Yeah, that's actually closer to.
Justice.
At the moment, it's like she's got an eye, a blindfold across one eye. The
Cheating.
scales are off to one side.
This
And she's got a
like
pistol.
that. Like this one. And the
It's
sword's kind of blunt.
is not balanced and is not blind, and punishment can be very harsh. And you probably got another statue behind her whispering in her ear.
Mm. And every swing of the sword costs a lot of money.
Yeah, which is where the whole balance goes askew, because it costs a lot of money.
Right.
So if you got lots of money, then you can direct where that sword goes.
Right. Right. And so when you try and put small things on the scale doesn't move.
Yeah.
And that's sort of annoying because it matters to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Then if you get 1,000 or 10,000 people who are all affected, then
Right.
it should be able to sway that scale. However, those 10,000 need to, or previously needed to, get into consensus.
Yeah.
Consensus is an illusion.
Yeah, they
It's
need to
like, how about
coordinate,
just
and it took too much
everyone gets
effort.
just content enough. It's like good.
Yeah, so we could make an entry point for these group chats that it was like, okay, if you care about this, sign this form. This commits you to the class action with these parameters, and here's the
you
group
can
chat.
leave at any point.
Yeah, yeah,
No worries.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if you're inside, then the rules are, you go by what the peacemaker decides, and here's how the peacemaker works.
That's very, very good, man. Because actually, we'd set out to solve equity issues where like people were arguing over who got paid what, but really
Same
the
thing.
deeper thing is arguing at all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Any
What we're
kind of
trying to
arguing.
solve
So
is
the
who's
general, the general,
subclass.
the general result of the ambient attribution agent, or a model that can satisfy the ambient attribution requirements, is sufficient to satisfy settling any argument.
Yeah. I would argue it is.
I'd settle with you on that one. That's kind of, that feels like a long way off the reservation, actually.
I think we've been looking at a special case, and
We've just been blindly driving at this one special case that is a powerful one. Let's not get that wrong.
yeah.
But actually, there's a lot more. There's a lot more places and a lot more peace and value that can be created from having a peacemaker.
Yeah. I'm starting to love that name, actually.
It's like mechanized dispute resolution.
Yeah.
The first production line automatically produced
Yeah.
resolver. It's like the peacemaker resolver.
Equalizer. The equalizer.
Wouldn't that be cool though, to have like peacemakers in all the areas of conflict in your life?
You could apply it. The thing is, that model, wherever you've got two or more people in dispute.
If you've got one person in dispute, that's a different kind of problem.
Your problem.
That's the Mental Health Institute problem.
Work that out.
Yeah,
yourself.
you're like, buddy.
But anything from divorce to, some companies fouled the local river and everyone's getting sick, or, there are wars between nations, or there's, and democracies. It scales very well. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of tokens. and complexity, of course. But the complexity is held inside of a very simple structure.
You could imagine a voice for a whole country could be emulated in this way. Well, you didn't vote yes or no or this or that. You voted by just giving your opinions, and
Right.
the
Those
LLM
opinions,
rolled it up.
can change. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
It's like, oh yeah. Because at the moment, democracy sucks because
yeah,
what they're asking is a decision at this point in black and white.
yeah. But they
You
had
are
to.
agreeing on every policy.
It was a
Uh,
machine. They had to make a machine that was unintelligent because they didn't have intelligent machines.
well, it was a scaling problem. If you look back at
Yeah,
Greece, they
yeah,
had referenda for basically every decision,
yeah.
but not everyone could vote.
No.
And now we've got everyone can vote, but not on every decision.
And so AI as a country, it would be like the government was this AI and it listened to everyone and it
Yes,
just acted as the average, or it acted on the generality of the population
and
with some inbuilt intelligence underneath, like some inbuilt, because the models have their innate sense of intelligence, right?
And all we're asking is for people who contribute to like attribution. All we're asking is you agree to the rules of the game, and that is open. Have a look, make your own decision.
And so the court in this sense would be like you could rerun the generation that the court went through to give its outcome. But even better, if it was for confidential matters, you could run a translator that pseudo-anonymized it and then ran the justice call on that. So actually you were never ruling on any specific case. You were always
Like appeals. Yeah.
you were always converting it into generalized or anonymizable things so that every ruling can be public, and then people can rerun it and see if it worked correctly and debate it and poke at it and all that.
yes, yes, because the thing that is injustice is any kind of gradient. Because people feel powerless if there's a very high gradient.
The funny thing about this statute is the fact that it embodies the entire system as a single agent,
Yes.
and we naturally, yeah, right, we naturally expect to be able to talk to that entity directly,
Yeah.
and that's right, but that's not
Embodying
possible.
AI. Well, embodying AI into Lady Justice here.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure people would, as they got to know and trust her, they'd be all right. They'd be all right with that, even if the decision went against them.
it would be justifiable, and because it was converted to be public, it would be part of the general knowledge, and it could be overturned and refined and fixed, but you can also
Retrospectively updated because she's always sitting there. She's 24/7.
so you
and it's
could
always
collapse
there.
the entire system down to this one agent then, because now you don't need, like, you can have just an idea that you got ripped off and Lady Justice can come in. You can plug Lady Justice into your company's operating system and it can be constantly giving you feedback on what's happening, what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, who did something against you. Like, you can remove a large number of human agents with just one solid.
Yeah, I mean the single most expense of my life was my divorce. And
I think that's
if
a common
this
thing,
system was
dude.
around, yeah, if this system was around, it'd have cost a fraction of it, and I would probably have been slightly grumpy about what she decided, but I would still
Yeah,
go with it.
but you
Because,
can also extend the capabilities of the justice system. Like, obviously, another hearing or a retrial is expensive, and the justice system tries to avoid it because you'll clog the pipe. But
yeah,
with an
and
AI,
delays are a big thing.
you could be
Yeah,
like, we're going to recalculate every week. We're going to recalculate how things are going, and we're going to redo the whole court procedure every Monday
or
morning. Like,
any state change.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's like okay, and also you could recalculate it over time, even after
right.
decision. It's like okay, so
So
turns out
in our
you're right.
system, Lady Justice then would be a very large number of group chats, and then there's a very large number of internal self threads where she's reasoning through what's been said in each group chat, and
Yeah,
then spitting out an outcome, which may include a tool call, which is a ruling or a decision that needs to be enforced or can be enforced.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you could have different types of group chat where you have like the two primary combatants, like the plaintiff and the respondent, and then the spectators. So you can have a group chat with like 1,000 people, but only two people matter
Mhm.
when Lady Justice is talking. So
Hey, oh god, this model works in so many ways. Have you guys got the show X Factor? Or
yes.
yeah, so you've got three judges sitting down there, um, practically determining the future of the life of the person up. Because if they win the X Factor, they generally end up famous and with wealth. And then you've got the audience who are all applauding or not applauding. And then you've got the whole phone-in thing. It's the same model. The same model. If you obfuscate the three judges and then put above Lady Justice above that, then you can arbitrate against a large number of people who are very lightly involved, a
Mm.
smaller but still large number of people who are more directly involved, a very small number of people who are directly involved, and then Lady Justice.
Mm.
It works in so many ways. Um, hmm. I think probably the hardcore test, which I'm not suggesting that we even think about, but I'm just raising it for shits and giggles, is the talent contest. Who is the best talent of all these people coming in front? Um,
And then you have a
Same
bot that
thing,
decides.
yeah, but based on the collective wisdom of the crowds, but also tiered.
Right, so like the audience is like a certain weighting of voice within the group chat. The
Because they
judges
care
are
more,
another, are like a higher
yeah,
weighting, and
right,
so
because
the
their
the
talent
the
is
agent can, in the case of an upset, go with the crowd over the overruling the judges and all those kinds of things, right?
right. And then you've got all these people who just need to dial in. They've got very loose
Okay,
connection,
so
and so
what's the most contentious place that you can think of to apply that model for the sake of advertising?
well, not sure about advertising, but the most contentious thing would be geopolitical, situations. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. Um, what do you mean by in terms of advertising?
Um, I'll try to pull up the example I'm thinking of.
Hmm. Oh, I see, like an Ansari Express type.
Maybe, maybe, but uh, Fraser, that's the one.
Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Just as you're looking at, really think we're on something really powerful. The combination of incentivization with fairness.
So what someone did was they set up a bot, and it cost you money to play, like $100, and you paid $100, which allowed you to give a prompt that went into the AI. If you could convince the AI to give you all the money in the prize pool,
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's sort of like could we make a contentious thing where people try to fuck with it, and we just see how that goes? Maybe
Yeah.
not. I mean,
Well, I remember seeing this. I remember thinking it's an absolute genius idea. It's a genius idea because it's self-funding, and all you need to do is to set up the background prompt. I'm sure he made a ton of cash out of it.
yeah.
But I guess it differs from us in that what we're trying to do is to kind of improve the world in terms of fairness, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a dead end, because I can't think of anything to do. But like, okay, so I'll make this model, right? Like that seems pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
because now it's just files and folders, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll just YOLO the transclude bit a bit just to get something going, and
Yeah.
then I'll put it up in this form, in this UI, and then
Yeah.
we can add each other as friends and have chats and poke around and add bots and experiment with the self channel and
Yeah.
all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Ideal. Ideal. And once we get in there, then I can start explaining this with something concrete to show. And my view is, we'll find out, we'll be tested. My view is that there's a lot of people who will jump at the chance to use something along the lines of transparency, AI, and arbitrator, Lady Justice, in order to just clear the antagonism around
Right, so because
contentious.
that's quite an interesting first place to launch it. Like if we could find a few of these cases that are understaffed, under-resourced, but they're very popular. Like they caught the public's attention because it seems like injustice. And if
Yeah,
we could convince a few of those people, like, hey, look, try this system. Here's what it does. Maybe that's a good way to get some initial usage and feedback. Maybe.
I think so. I think so. And also, the thing is, if you, let me think. 2 seconds. If you care about a subject, this is an interesting one. If you care about a subject, you're willing to put a few bucks behind it, crowdfunding wise.
Well, I mean, you're willing to burn some tokens on it, right? Like if we could present a solution where you could burn $20 worth of tokens, and we could prove to you that we were burning them efficiently, and it was all on tasks that you wanted. It was kind of like a superpower deep research on steroids that you can also talk with your friends about. if
Yeah,
you know, like, because
yeah.
I bet you how many times around the world is someone who has access to deep research running it on a problem that their friends have, and then sending the result off to their friends and being like, look at this. And if
They're
we could,
probably, yeah,
right?
they're probably doing it over a Facebook group or
Yeah,
WhatsApp group.
yeah. And so if we could make that happen on platform, and then you can chat with it yourself,
Mhm.
and then you can form a little club. Like, you can take the Facebook group and you can form a little consortium with some funds, and you've got this peacemaker that ensures that the stated purpose of the project is upheld at all times, and you can chat about it and talk about it and influence it. It's
That
probably
seems
the best way to
as a
start something like
as a
that.
s- as a standalone. That sounds really quite powerful. Because how many pissed off groups of people are there in the world?
Oh fuck.
Quite a lot. How many have actually got any kind of organization other than one grassroots guy who's, probably,
Yeah,
printing out and putting into
yeah.
files
And it
and
often the law kills the formation of those groups because, are you going to register as a non-profit? No. Are you going to incorporate and pay taxes? No.
right,
No. Are
right,
you,
right,
like,
right.
there's
The
all these
sharing of funds.
things.
It's like with the TFU. I mean, if you presented to the TFU, I think.
Sharing of funds is the chief mechanism by which the small players are prohibited from taking on the big players. Because
Right.
if you're like, you can never, it's like sharing of funds is the same as saying the right to freedom of assembly. If you cut that off, you can no longer
Yes.
form a mob, right?
And without some kind of mechanism that people feel is fair, they're not incentivized to do it because one guy is like, I'm buying this drone with my own pocket. It's cost me
Mm.
$500, and this guy is doing fuck all. He's got the same voice. That's not good. You just end up being fractious and then
Yeah,
ultimately splitting.
it's an unstable structure. It will always
Yeah,
fall. It's an
yeah.
unstable structure. But this machine can
Oh,
stabilize.
that's damn it. That we're right back to Dreamcatcher then. That
No,
works.
it's Dreamcatcher Plus, because figuring out how the ambient attribution agent was always past looking,
Yeah.
but the
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
peacemaker is forwards looking. It's saying
yeah.
that we want to achieve this thing. How should we
Right.
do it? The ambient attribution bot had no opinion on that, right?
Right. But the Peacemaker is making
The
decisions.
peacemaker does,
And
yeah. And
yeah.
so what you'd expect is that the peacemaker would choose to use ambient attribution as the means of funds dispersal if it suited the case and everyone agreed. But that's the peacemaker is really the it, that might be the prize.
It might
Peace,
be the
cohesion, unity,
yeah, contentness.
focus.
You're never gonna. I don't think we ever get everyone being maximally happy, but being
Maximally happy
having
might just be, once you've reconciled with reality and each other,
well,
maximally happy might
that's
just
max
be.
that's maximal contentness. It's like everyone is they're not happy, but they're content. It's like
Right. But it also helps, I think, significantly that you're also aware of everyone else's state. Like, there's nothing worse than thinking someone else got paid more than you for doing
yeah,
less work.
exactly,
But if you
exactly.
knew, if you
Which
knew
is
it
the same
all,
problem around shares, about
yeah,
profit sharing, about share options,
yeah,
about
if you knew it all,
what do I
and
get
you're like,
paid.
that's actually, it's pretty good.
Uh-huh.
So maybe this thing here is really the piece that we wanted, because the ambient attribution agent is just one specific instance of a framework that we've come up with. But the peacemaker is the thing that brings people together in the first place, so that they actually have some attribution to ambiently attribute because they got their shit together to make contributions.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to go around in circles and just agree with you vociferously. But yeah,
That is a pretty good place to end up, buddy.
it's not bad for
For a
morning's
chatbot
work, is it?
to go from a fucking chatbot to like, hey,
Let's solve basically.
and it
need
just shows up
fun.
as a set of chats, and you go around chatting, and then you can invite an expensive agent like the Justice Department to come in, and you just have a chat to the Justice Department, and then you
Right.
call up your lawyer, and you're like, hey, lawyer bot, get in here. I need you to make up 1,000 scenarios that are all in my favor and throw them at the Justice Bot. I'm paying. And it's like, okay. And then, like, 1,000 court cases just took place in front of you. And,
The
you know,
number of grievances I've got is probably similar to you. I've got a lot of grievances.
every day, every
And
day
it's
another
like,
grievance.
Life is too short. I don't have many funds, and I'll just let it slide. But
Right.
you aggrieved me, not you, but the third party aggrieved me, and I just don't have the time. I don't have the resources.
Right.
I would love justice.
Right. But even if you just declared that, it might even act as an olive branch to those people to come forwards, use the system, and reconcile with you, because perhaps you're both a little bit mistaken. Perhaps if that person was given a fair explanation of why the grievance exists and how the court would probably rule, maybe they'll come to the party, and maybe you guys could be friends again. Who knows?
We kind of got a bit of a model for this. I mentioned before about Judge Judy. So the reason that is such a okay, so this is one of my guilty sins. I quite like watching Judge Judy, but the the reason is you got a matter that could end up with a 5-figure legal bill for both sides and be undecided. But in order to go on the TV program, they both agree, although it's got no kind of legal basis, that they'll agree with whatever Judge Judy says.
Right. Right.
And it's like,
Oh,
let's
right.
just
So you can be like, damages awarded can't be above $5,000. So we could do this like in public, where we get some simple paperwork drawn up where it's like, two people got a grievance, they're going to agree to run these simulations, the damages are going to be up to X, but here's the catch. The internet can petition the bot. So you turn up, you sign up, you're like, yep, $5,000 max, we're going to argue it out. And then you say, also, the internet plus all these bots are going to try and fight on whichever side they want to.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like,
So your entry, your stakes for the game is you waive all rights to go to any other kind of judicial body.
Yeah.
And you're gonna put it up to
you're gonna make it public. You're gonna make this dispute public, and then this is maybe a little bit dirty, but you could invite people to post open-ended invitations like that, where you could list out your grievances, target a specific person, and publicly invite them to come and accept your challenge to be part of this.
Right. Yeah. Because I've got a ton of those.
Right.
And it would get funny. About who against, but
it would be funny if you started to find overlaps.
This is wrong.
You could find overlaps between, like, if the same person had done several things that have the same pattern, then you're like, ooh, we got ourselves a nasty one here. You know, but then you can also find patterns in the behavior. So you're like, it's a common pattern that this type of thing happens. So Be warned. Put out a warning. Everyone who subscribes to this feed, watch out. We see this pattern happen time and time again. Don't get caught. This is a nuisance. This is a nuisance pattern. You know,
Yeah.
that's quite fun now.
There's a lot here, isn't there? I'm going to need to go and get the dog.
Yeah, I gotta go too, buddy.
Oh, and there's a call.
That was great. All right, I'll stop the recording.